Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Time for some more opinions, and this one's around people stealing their children's success. Now, thankfully, your two boys, hey Paddy, hey Dom, are as dumb as dog shit and will have no success, so you don't need to worry.
I'm
just kidding, Paddy, Dom, love you boys.
Just hearing, like, I'm thinking, Dave, I'm more focused on wanting to give my kids some complexes, right? Like,
if my parents doesn't screw up their kids'
if
future?
my kids are not in counselling by the time they're 30, I think I failed as a parent. Right?
100%.
Well, I don't want to steal their success. I want to impede their success and make life inherently more difficult.
Yeah.
And then, colour that with some stories about how hard my life was.
Well, that's what actually happens. You listen to all the people who are really successful and they overcome the challenges of their childhood. What kind of a parent is going to turn around and give a kid a great childhood?
Not at all.
Seriously.
Not at all. But on a serious note, Dave, are parents in today's society helping too much? Is the helping starting to hurt, especially when it comes to development of kids, young adults into adults, and navigating everything that, adulthood and the challenges that come with that? Are we helping too much?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, and I understand it comes from the heart. At the end of the day, I still cut the crusts off the little man's Nutella sandwiches for breakfast. Although I did tell him you're in high school next year, it's not happening. And so I understand. I understand that from our heart we try to give them a lot of love, support, encouragement, the best life. Trying any errors from our parents, we're trying to fix those as we try to do a whole bunch of other good things for them. But at the end of the day, sometimes we've got to step back and let them take their own steps and learn to stand on their own 2 feet. Otherwise, the essence of why I chose the topic, calling it stealing your child's success, is over the years, a lot of conversations with people about how they've parented, what they've done and haven't done. I start to see today that, we've got a very soft generation, right? That starts with not keeping score in sports. So at the end of the day, if you don't keep score in sport, how does someone know at the start of the year we got beaten 10-0 at soccer, and at the end of the year we were losing 10-9? So the success of our improvement, right? So, and the same thing if you give your kids a deposit for a house, and some rare exceptions, I understand the Sydney property market, the Australian property market. But if you're not going to turn around and say to your kids, look, you do the best you can, take on the second job, save your money with your partner, and then they get to say $100,000 and you can afford to say, look, Mum and I have spoken and we can afford to give you another $100,000. What you're really doing by giving it all to them is when the key goes in the first time and they turn it, you're smiling. You're tasting the success of your blood, sweat and tears over the years. They're not. So you want them to understand that the second job, the time they didn't go traveling to Europe, all the sacrifices they made, here's the sweet taste of success as the end result of what you've done. So I think we are really, from school, from a very young age, on a societal level, through to individually as parents, we're starting to do too much, and we are taking away that sweet taste of success from our kids' future.
I think it's important to note, Dave, we're not talking about neglect either.
No.
All right? We're talking about...
No, I would always make sure there's enough lead that they could get to the water bowl and the food bowl.
Yeah.
I don't want to tie them on too short a lead.
Every now and then give it a bit of a yank, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or electrify it just for fun.
But you don't want to be providing too much support that actually leaves them unprepared for the realities of adult life.
That's what we're doing. That's a great point. Was that Chat GPT or is that actually you?
That was actually me for a change.
That's very insightful.
Because you're right.
Are you getting smarter by osmosis?
No.
By just hanging out with me on Monday nights?
Hanging out with Tom on Monday nights. Thanks, Tom.
That's Tom. Producer Tom. I make you a little dumber, and it makes you a little bit more smarter. And overall,
2 steps forward. You mentioned the term, as we discussed this midweek, Dave, it's a popular term. I presume it's popular around most Western society. The old helicopter parent, Dave.
Yeah.
But this notion of hovering, this notion of wanting to manage every outcome for our children and make sure it's a favorable one.
Yeah.
Very popular. I think it came to that tells me here it became popularized in the 90s, this hovering and helicopter parenting. I don't think my parents were helicopter parents.
Well, they didn't exist nowadays.
Yeah.
You couldn't afford a helicopter.
That's right.
Back in my day, we couldn't afford a helicopter. The other term I like is people that don't have a mother, they have a smother. And that's, those two things between helicopter parenting and smothering. I think that's, not healthy. The little man's actually, we've sent his expression of interest off already for Army cadets for next year, because you have to be 12 years of age and turning 13 the year you start. So he's 12 on Wednesday. Well, this is probably going to be dropped afterwards. So he's recently turned 12. And next calendar year, he turns 13. So come January, February, he can start Army cadets. Now, that came about because I got sick of telling him, make your bed, do this, do that, before school. And anyway, I can't remember how it came about, but I'm at work and something popped in my head about Army cadets, or actually cadets. So I didn't have a preference whether Army, Navy, Air Force. I just looked at cadets. How old do you have to be? Blah, blah, blah. I get home. I said to him, I look at him, I said, listen, I'm sick of telling you about making your bed. You're old enough, you should know you're going to the Army. And his jaw hits the ground. And he's thinking I'm sending him off to an Army school. He's like, I'll make my bed. I'll do it. And I said, I'm just joking. I said, do you want to do cadets? I said, you can do Army, Navy, Air Force. I don't care. Choice is yours, but I think it'd be good for you. You'll learn some life skills. You'll get some good habits of discipline. You'll understand you got to get up. You got to make your bed. You got to do your hair. You got to brush your teeth. So he's actually been very, very excited about it. But I thought, it's probably a good thing for him, because I know that the Mauritian Queen certainly is an outstanding mum and spoils him. And I know I sort of, at times spoiling a bit too much. And he's a good kid. It's like Patty and Dom, right? They're good kids. And it's like when we went to Kiama. Did you notice as soon as you provide the environment for the kids, they're not just on digital. They want to be out near the beach. They want to be running around. They want to be doing everything. So I thought, let's just provide the environment for him to go out camping, orienteering, doing all that stuff. And I reckon he'll love it.
So absolutely, Dave. I think it's important for kids to get engaged in any activity that's going to build like a level of independence, a level of self-confidence, that they can actually get stuff done without having to rely on mum and dad, right?
Exactly.
Now, what's one of the biggest hot topics in terms of how parents try to over-cater outcomes or, deliver outcomes for their kids? They just can't help themselves. And it's the bank of mum and dad, where you could argue that it stops being support and starts being
the crutch
or dependency.
Yeah.
Right? So at what point do we snap the dependency of children on their parents? And now I would suggest there's almost an expectation, Dave, that if the parents have got capacity, they're dipping their hand in their pocket. Right.
Which is the wrong thing to do, because it reminds me of an interview I saw with Shaquille O'Neal, and he was talking about his son and how he was saying something. I think he'd asked for something, and Shaq says no. And the kid's like, oh, why not? We're rich. And Shaq says, no. I'm rich.
Yeah.
You need to learn to earn. Right. And Mike Tyson was the same. Have you ever seen the Mike Tyson one where he talks about his son came up to him and said he wanted to be a boxer when he turned 16?
Yeah.
Dad, I want to be a boxer. And then he starts laughing at him. You ain't no boxer. You ain't a private school. You go on ski trip. And it's like, that hilariousness of, you've not got the mongrel to do it. But the point is that if we start giving too much, it can ruin them. And we saw it in the extremes with Lori Loughlin, who was the actress. I think was it Full House, where she was from? But anyway, with the college admission scandal, where they were paying huge sums of money to get their daughters on the supposed sailing team. They'd never sailed, but then they're getting scholarships into uni as supposed sailing. And so you've got these kids that are walking around thinking they're great because they're Ivy League colleges that didn't earn anything. And now I remember a famous, I shouldn't say famous. I remember an article I read. This would have to be 20 years ago. I could probably look it up and find out. But there was this kid that had been done for embezzlement and a few things. That it turned out that straight out of school, he grew up in Sydney's North Shore, straight out of school, because of his father's connections, he started on $350,000. This was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he had no responsibility. And when he started doing all these wrong things in corporate and then trying to cover it up with all these criminal activities, and you just think to yourself, the judge is sentencing. He says, I understand it's not your fault to the extent that, you were given a $350,000 a year job because of your father's connections. And so you can, at the extreme, you can really destroy your child's future. And I actually had a client say to me once, this was 15 years ago. I think I was still, or maybe not that long, because I was still at the University of Sydney. So he sees me, at the University of Sydney and still hustling on weekends, helping out my mate. And he says, geez, Dave, I wish my son was like you. I said, really? You don't want that? He goes, no, your work ethic. He said, you did your trade and then you still went off to uni. He goes, my son's 33. He dropped out of uni. He doesn't have a trade. And this guy was a psychiatrist, a successful psychiatrist. And he said, when I've spoken to him about it, he blames me. He says, it's your fault. You sent me to private school and I've never learned how to do things on my own.
Yeah.
And now I hate that. It's a cop-out because at 33, be a man and take some responsibility.
Yeah.
But these are the extreme outcomes of if you don't know when to pull the handbrake.
I know, but I think it's more like the stats say that 48% of first home buyers now receive parental financial help in Australia.
Wow, that's way too high.
Right. And then the Bank of Mum...
With exception... If I'd like to know a deep dive in that data, otherwise I'll be like our RBA that can't read data for shit.
Yeah.
If that 48%, 95% of it's made up of parents just saying, look, we'll be guarantor.
Yeah.
And it's not just handing over money. So I'd like to know what's the definition of...
So the next point is the Bank of Mum and Dad in Australia is now the 9th largest lender in the country.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So that's money.
Handing over
that's
money.
Like guarantors, right? Can you believe it?
Although lender, that implies... your kids are going to pay back.
Yeah. We know that's not going to happen.
Never got $1 from my parents for anything. Like, seriously.
And I'm
not.
I'm the same. Like, they pay for some stuff here and there, but like when it came to property, it was my deposit.
No, I didn't even get a car or anything. And don't get me wrong, I've said this before, like this is not, poor Dave. No, my parents worked. They put the food on the table. They put a roof over our head. They educated us. Like, really, being all things equal, being fair, they did what a parent is supposed to do. But for me, I couldn't imagine someone handing me a deposit for a house. In fact, I used to deliver newspapers 25 years ago when I was getting my first deposit together. I used to have fun. It'd be like 2 a.m. in the morning. You'd be there wrapping the newspapers, and by about 2:30, 2:45, you'd be out on the road. And then this was when I was still playing cricket and great arm. And a newspaper at that length, you'd be throwing them out the car window like that. Oh, cat. It used to be a fun thing. I'd just have my music going, and then the guy that owned the newspaper shop would tell me who hadn't paid their bill. And the point of that was, make sure you throw it under his car, so he's got to get to it. But so all these fun things that you'd actually do in this second job.
But it's more, Dave, than just the Bank of Mum and Dad doling over money. In the UK, 54% of adults aged 20 to 24 still live at home, right? It gets better. In the US, more 18 to 34-year-olds live with parents than with partners, first time since the 1880s.
That one's a bigger problem. That's an even deeper issue. It's one thing if it's financial. It's another thing if it's relational.
Go on.
So if it's a financial decision, because you could still be living at home and being smart. So if you're still at home at 24, but you go, no, I've saved 20 grand a year for the last 4 years, and I'm working on my deposit, tick, that's great.
Yeah.
Or maybe again, you're not saving money, but you're not wasting anything. There are people that their money goes into the family pot because the family's struggling to pay all the bills. But if you're still at home because you're not partnered, that's a deeper issue we have in society, because we're finding that people aren't partnering up for a number of reasons, which means we don't get the family unit, which means we get less children, which means we get declining birth rates, which means we rely on immigration, which puts upward pressure on the price of housing and so on and so forth.
There's increasingly, like I read these stats of the 18 to 34-year-olds or 20, 24-year-olds, and I got this image of these mostly men in some basement, right? But either gaming or on some multiple apps doing whatever they're doing, but not engaging with people and not actually doing adult things.
Yeah, but some of them screw it up too. I'll give you a story, and I know this is fact. I won't give the names, but this is not a hearsay. This is not anything's in question. I know this for a fact. Someone turns around and gives his stepson an opportunity to live in like the granny flat. The place has previously been rented out. He turns around and says, "Listen, your dad sort of moved and retired. You're only like 19. I know how." The person goes, "I know how hard it is to get somewhere. I love your mum. Come and move in here. All you got to do is pay $100 a week, and you pay your bills, right?" $100 a week. The guy then takes the $100 a week and he goes shopping because he knows young men. He buys deodorant, his body wash, breakfast cereal, milk. So in other words, he's paying nothing. All he's doing is taking it and making sure he's got the staples. And he says, "Make sure you use this opportunity to save your money." He gets it about 3 months in. He stops even paying the $100 a week. The guy's like, "Oh, I won't start the problem because he loves his mum." And then after a year, he sits him down at dinner, and this kid's going in and eating there 2 or 3 times a week, still not paying the rent. But he's still feeding him, doing the right thing for his out of love for his mum. But he has a conversation, says to him, because what happens is his car's out of rego and he's now asking his mum to get up at 4 a.m. and drop him to work and things like that. So this guy says, "Tell him to come down for dinner." Says, "You were here 15 months ago. You haven't even been able to pay $100 rent. You can't even pay your rego now. You've gone backwards." He said, "You've got 2 choices now. You can either move from the granny flat into the main house now and just have the spare room. Or it's up to you. If you don't want to do that, you can leave." So he chooses to leave. So it's 18 months, hasn't saved anything. And on the way out the door, gives the guy a gobful, telling him he's a prick. Like, this is what we're raising.
And sorry, is this like a legit?
This is legit.
Yeah.
Legit. No, I know this for a fact. I'll tell you off. I don't want
no.
I'll tell you off air. But this is for a fact. So he has 18 months, pays his $100 a week for the first 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, doesn't pay anything for the next 13, 14 months. The guy, by the way, buys him big screen TV when he moves in his granny flat, try and set him up nice to try and say, "Look, there's no excuses here. You've got a dream. You've got your own space because I'm treating you as a man. So your girlfriend can come over. You're not in the house. You got your separate thing, but you don't have these big bills, And he says to him, "You can be here 3 or 4 years. Get a deposit together for a house." And on the way out the door, after all that, when he's been eating his food, drinking his drink, getting his mum to drive at 4 a.m., hasn't paid his $100 a week that he was getting everything back, and then gives the guy a gobful as he drives off when he moves out of the day.
Yeah, that's just entitlement.
And by the way, when he gives the guy a gobful, the guy turns around and says to him, "What could have just been thank you." And then he tries to be a smart ass, and the guy says, "Well, okay." And because he does the big, like, "I'll have you," and says the guy's like, "Well, all right." And then he shits his pants and off he goes.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you off air who it is, but this is what we're raising. So we've got people now that not only when you help them, but then they don't even have 2 brain cells to even see the opportunity they have to go, "You know what, I'm really going to make something of my life here. I'm going to grab this with both hands." And the reason why the guy actually did it for him is because that person had been out of home young and knew how hard it is to pay rent and get somewhere.
Yeah.
So to me, we've got this whole range of things. You've got to be careful that you're not creating. Well, basically, this kid, I know the person actually said to his mum, and I know it's upsetting for mum, but the person said he's no opa because he's now 21, no trade, no degree, like nothing.
Yeah.
He's on the fast train to nowhere.
Yeah.
But then you've got the others that even if they are a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, if you're going to do everything for them, where are they going to learn that life comes with challenges? And there are solutions to those challenges, but you got to have the mongrel. You got to have the grit. You got to dig in and do it.
So like your parents buy a house for you, you get a roof, right? Fantastic. But have you earned it? Have you felt the pain, right?
And you've got to feel pain.
Have you been knocked around? Because what does that do? It builds muscle, mental muscle, right?
Yep.
To actually understand how you deal with adversity. And it gets you to make choices, and not endless choices, but the right choices for you at the point in time to make sure you can pay for that house.
Exactly.
And it is absolutely, the data's in, it's much more difficult now for young people than it was for you and I, right? But they're almost at a point now where they've given up, right? So there's actually no for a large section of that cohort, because they're so reliant on mum and dad. You really got to start questioning whether we're building any capability at all around resiliency, the ability to make the choices you need to make and sacrifice. Because we've touched on this in multiple podcasts in the past, where people want everything now. So,
They do.
So as a 28-year-old, I want to be married. I want a big wedding. I don't want an apartment. I want a home.
And you're touching on the big one there.
You're right. I want a home, and I want a home in a nice suburb near my parents where they grew up, right? And I want the big screen TV, and I want the nice car. And when I get pregnant, I still want all of that, even though one income's been halved, right? Now, it just doesn't happen. Now, I'm being extreme there in that example, but there's a sense that a lot of people want, or not a lot, enough of that cohort wants stuff much quicker without any pain, and they want as much support as they can get to get there.
And they also want to live. I think it was Bernard Salt said this. He said they're the generation that wants to live their retirement before they've worked. So do you remember when Bernard Salt, the economist, wrote the article about the smashed Davo? You're not going to be able to save money while you're eating smashed Davo breakfast at $20 a pop, and they all got their knickers hair knot. There was a better line in that article where he actually called them the generation that have lived their retirement before they've worked. And that's true too. And I believe every individual has a right to spend your money how you want. But if you and your partner are dropping 15, 20 grand a year on the best restaurants and traveling the world, and over 10 years, that would have been $400,000 or $500,000 compounded. Well, you can't blame everyone else. You made some choices. Now, as you've mentioned, right, the cost of, say, a house at 9, 10x, I get it. We should be working on some stuff to address that issue. But that doesn't mean they can't get on the property ladder. That means there's a genuine argument for them to say, just like my parents, they had to move out further than what they really wanted. I've got to move out further. But the issue is where they might want to be, let's call it Strathfield, and they went to Marylands and they got a house. For me, I want to be Marylands, but I've got to go to Penrith. But the difference is I can't get a house in Penrith either because it's 1.2 for a dump, but I can get a unit at 500,000 or 600,000. So that should be their argument. They should be saying, I can still get on the ladder. My ego is being dropped. I'll get the 2-bedroom apartment in Penrith. But by the way, there's still an issue because I've done everything. I've worked the second job. We've made the sacrifices by not traveling. We've accepted we have to go further out than what we wanted was our first home, but we couldn't get a house. I've had to go on a unit because a house is 10x. That's where their legitimate claim is.
Yeah, I get it.
And this is something we've got to teach them too, is that, again, I've mentioned in other episodes, your parents uprooted from Italy and came all the way around the world. And there's a lot of people in Australia, I think over half our population weren't born here, right? So if they can uproot their life and they can come here and they can get in the property ladder, and I'm not talking about wealthy Chinese or people that have brought their money in. I'm talking about people that migrated for better opportunity, were genuine refugees out of wars. How come they could make it and you can't? And again, someone might go, oh, Dave, you're talking about 20 or 30 years ago. No, I know someone right like in the last few years from Syria, right? A friend's sister and her husband, and he couldn't speak English, but he's like a doctor or a professor, but he can't speak English. So he took a job in 7-Eleven, but he worked 14 hours a day and he's learned his English and they saved their money and then they bought their first property. So if you can come from a war-torn country, can't speak the language, and you understand you got to do some long hours, make some sacrifices, accept the pain, and then you get on the property ladder and you don't have to pay rent. People are born here. English is your first language. You've got a bachelor's degree or you've got a trade. There's no excuse why you can't make it. Just reevaluate your choices and you'll get there. And again, I accept we've got to work on some of the other issues that are meaning you're living in an apartment rather than a house. But let's start off with one thing at a time while we work on the other fixes.
Okay. Dave, this hovering of parents, this wanting to control outcomes, it breeds an entitlement mindset, right? That mum and dad will always fix it. And that's actually ballooned out in Australia where I don't think it was always there. I'm pretty sure it wasn't, where we always think or a certain part of society thinks that the government's there to fix it. That's what the government's role is.
Yep.
When I've got problems, the government fixes
And
it.
that's not what they do. The government's there to administer the tax revenue and to oversee legislation. There's meant to just be the oil of the economy and the oil of society. That's it. You want small government. You're meant to look after yourself.
That's right. And the other point is, Dave, with a lot of the hovering and the stats I quoted around both the US, the UK, and
those stats are quite concerning. By
Australia around the delayed adulthood, right? So living at home, not getting into relationships, maybe not wanting to get into relationships because they're too comfortable at home, right? And
Gary and I did an episode called "When Does Adulthood Begin?" after I read a study that the generation self-identified as adults starting close to 30.
As opposed to 18, right?
That's very scary.
Yeah. So, and that impacts career, relationships, decision making, because extending your time. I'm not saying we want to kick people out, but if you're
kick him out. You're 12, get in the chimney, you little bastard.
If you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you're still at home with no plan to move out, right? You really are delaying some of these fundamental developmental steps you should be taking in terms of self accountability. Being responsible for, paying the rent or paying a mortgage, cooking your own dinner, because parents, especially mothers with boys and sons, it doesn't matter if they're 12 or 24, they're still going to try and do everything for them, right?
Yeah.
And then what are they creating?
A man-child, a kid-alt,
That's right.
as the women call them. But I think there are signs in our society all round of how we've infantilized a lot of adults as well, because I saw something today talking about like the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. And it was chock full of like Avatar and Marvel movies and things that shouldn't be anywhere near that list. But it's like, I look at the Comic-Cons, I look at all this stuff and you see how many adults now that, and don't get me wrong, I love the fun aspect to it. I think you should always, there's a difference between acting like an adult and having the inner child and acting like a child. So I don't believe we should kill the inner child. But I think if we look around society, the way we've done things collectively and as families, we've babied so many people that we're in a dangerous situation where the numbers don't stack up. So you're a numbers guy. So using that, I spoke about in that episode that using 30 as their self-identification of when they're going to start adult, and they're the generation that's meant to live to 100. And if you're going to retire at 70, that means for 60 years of your life, you're basically unproductive. You've got 40 years to pay your HECS debt, get a deposit together, pay off your mortgage, and assume that the first place you buy is big enough for your family, raise your family, and put enough money aside for your retirement. Unless you are in the top 1%, no one's going to be able to do that, right? So what we should be doing is we're at a stage where we need a reversion. We need to start saying, right, HSC, using the Australian context, higher school certificate, so those last 2 years, they are designed to be preparatory for university. We're going to clean up university, and if you're not going to uni, you're going to leave at 16, you're going to get a trade. And that gives you 16 to 20, knock yourself out. Whatever money you make, spend it all. Buy cars, do a bit of travel, have fun. And if you're going on to uni and you go from 18 to 22, same thing. You've had 4 years, you've had fun, whatever. We're going to have to start saying to people, you've done your trade, you've done your uni, it's time to knuckle down and start getting your money together, because we can't wait those extra 8 years and say to them, oh, it's great, they're living life. Oh, they're in Italy this time, they were in France before, they're off to Asia. Because, yeah, that is great. That is fun. But those years are fundamental towards them establishing families, getting on the property ladder, and making it easier for them downstream, rather than the way we're going to have a generation of people that are going to start hitting 50 with nothing. And what's that going to do? We talk about superannuation, living the end of your life, but I saw the other day in Australia, the average person will retire with $350,000. And what they say, that works out to be $17,500 a year over 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you don't own a property and you've got to pay rent, how the hell are you going to live?
That's right.
So we're literally on the edge of catastrophe. And if we don't start raising people and getting them to stand on their own 2 feet, If we don't start saying, you know what, I'm a parent, I'm here to get you to this point, and the rest is up to you, we are going to not only steal the success of our own children, but we're going to steal the success of the entire society, because none of them are going to achieve what they need to achieve to live as long as what they are.
I get it. Dave, I want to touch on a couple of areas where there's a theme or an area we can discuss. There's like a positive side to the discussion, and then there's this over-supportive side. So the first one is financial literacy. So earn, save, and spend. There's discipline around that, right?
Yeah.
Get a job, you earn it, you save a bit, you spend a bit, and then you manage that. And then when you've got a specific target you want to be saving for, then you tweak the dial to make sure that you're on track to get there. The over-supportive outcome is money appears from parents, right? Where people don't have to make the sacrifice to get that deposit to buy their first home because they know that mummy and daddy there. And that starts, I reckon, pretty early.
Very.
I reckon increasingly it's much younger where they go, well, mum and dad are there. I can see dad's got a good car. Dad's got a good job. He's got a fancy title.
Yeah.
His place is paid for. He talks about his superannuation a lot. See, hey, dad. Hey, mum. You know what I mean?
Well, the price of housing is so omnipotent that even kids today know what their property is nearly worth.
That's right.
We had no idea growing up.
That's right.
Nor did we care.
That's right. The next one, Dave, is resilience. So the failure.
Actually, just before you go off that one, while I remember because you're right about how young it's starting. I saw a guy in a cafe a couple of years back where he'd ordered his coffee. He's holding his look like a daughter, 18 months, 24 months, and he gives her his card. I don't know if it's a credit card or a FPOS debit card, whatever. But the point being, he gives it to her and he's like leans so she can lean over and she taps on the thing. Oh, that's not a good thing to do because she just thinks, oh, she's already learning. You just tap this piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And that's how the transaction works. And that's why, as you know from banking and finance, that's why they love that. Disassociates you from, oh, holy Jesus, that was a 50. I only got 20 back.
Yeah.
I need to curtail my spending. So I think one of the things that's happening very early that we should do and can do, like, do you give the boys pocket money?
They actually got a Spriggy card.
What's a Spriggy card?
So a Spriggy is like a company that came up with this product where, it's an app. They get a debit card that's linked to a bank. And it's their own little account. And then when they do jobs around the house, like do this, do that, I give them pocket money for it.
Gotcha, so they do.
Right. And then it goes on their card so that they can tap and go and do whatever they want to do.
Brilliant. Now, I was going to say Will gets pocket money. If he doesn't do his chores, he misses out. And there was a time there where he wanted someone else he knew was buying a raging water, so a water park, summer pass, $90, comes to me and says, oh, can I get it? Here's the cash, put on your card. And Will comes along and says, oh, I want one too. And he'd been buying Robux from Roblox. And every time you come out with these $10 going, you sure this is how you want to spend your money? Yeah. So anyway, this time that he wants this park season pass, he's 40 short. So I didn't get it for him. And the tears, and I know he was upset. From that time, he's never bought Robux.
Yeah.
He saved enough money to buy himself a PlayStation 5 plus games, and now I think he's still got $800 or $900. So I say to people, if you're going to spend as a figure, you think each child's going to cost you $1,500 a year by the time you give them money for the water park, money to go to the movies, money for that party, whatever. Break that down and say that's $30 a week. I'm going to give them chores. They get their pocket money. If they don't do their chores, just like us, we don't work, you don't get paid. I said, then what happens is, A, they get the sense of value that they've earned it, and B, when they're seeing their money disappear, they start to think more carefully. So I think on the financial literacy thing, I think that's one of the small, simple things we can do. And that Spriggy card is exactly that concept.
Oh, no, it's really good, actually. It's actually, I'd recommend it to anyone. But in terms of financial literacy,
I still like him having cash.
Yeah, I know.
Because they still, he sees $10 and when he gives it over, he knows rather than the tap that sometimes it's, I don't know how much it was.
I've got to tell you a great story about financial literacy. So I tried to show the boys how you can leverage different people in your life to make a bit of a return. So in August this year, a few months back, my oldest boy turned 13, and about a month in advance of his birthday, he wants a mountain bike, and he never asked for anything. My Dom never asked for anything. That kid is just the best kid. And he was a bit sheepish. He said, Dad, I've done a bit of research and all my friends have got bikes and I'd like this one. And I said, mate, I'll take care of it. He's 13, you're a teenager. It'll be a good gift, all right? So it was $1,200. So being who I am, a tight-ass accountant, what do? I call Uncle Marco. He doesn't have kids. Hey, Marco, here's the deal. Dom's turning 13, wants a bike. How about we go 600 each? Yeah, done. Let me know where I've got to send the money. All good, done. So at the moment, 1,200 gift. I'm in for 600. My brother's in for 600. What do I do next? Let's call my mum. Hey, mum. Dom wants a bike. Anything for him. We're putting in money. Okay, I'll put in 400. Okay, thanks, mum. So now I'm down to 200.
Beautiful. So you'll hand him the bike and say happy birthday, and you won't have paid for anything.
And that, my friend, is financial literacy.
That's the best way to do it. Actually, bikes must be coming back in. I've been complaining kids don't ride bikes, but literally, Will's been getting me to, like, I drop him on the way to work, and he's been saying, "Oh, can I walk?" And what he means is drop him halfway because there's a point where his mates meet up with him, and they've got bikes.
Yeah.
And I've been saying to him for years, "You got to learn to ride a freaking bike." No, I don't want to. And now all of a sudden he wants a bike. So I said, I'll get him one over summer.
Yeah, I think it must be a year 5, year 6 thing, right? Because Dom and all his mates, they meet up now and go to Fred Catterson.
This is healthy. I hope there's a return to free play.
Yeah.
Like, again, don't get me wrong. I understand that there's going to be broken arms. There's going to be whatever goes wrong. But we've got to get back to our kids having the healthy memories in their life that we have of our childhood. And they've got to be able to have free play and learn and develop. And this is not just the fat bald guy on the Right to Be Wrong podcast. Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, literally can pinpoint, the decline in free play and the rise in, a lot of the mental health issues that are really mental resilience.
I know, because a lot of this we are talking around like real life issues that end up impacting how the kids develop, right? So on the resiliency side, through life experiences, failure develops an ability to cope, right? To weave, to pivot, find an alternative solution, and still get to the same endpoint, or an endpoint that you may be close to where you want to get to, which is great. Whereas in the scenario when you're not allowing your kids to fail, when you're not around, it actually creates a level of fragility and potentially anxiety for them, because they don't know how to cope. Right?
Well, failure is the building blocks of success.
Absolutely.
So what you're really doing is you're telling them, be successful without having any foundations. How's that going to work out?
Absolutely.
And even if they happen to, right? So this is, and I've mentioned this before, is even if they happen to, you give them everything, you've got private tutors for them, you pay for everything, and they end up with great scores at school, great scores at university, into these great jobs. They normally end up terrible leaders because they've got no empathy.
Yeah.
They don't understand the working class. This is part of the reason why in Western society we have this massive divide at the moment, because a lot of people have never been exposed to anything. So they don't understand what the other half goes through.
I want to touch on some more global examples, like little facts that I found a little bit hilarious. So in Japan, they're called parasite singles, adults living with parents into the 40s. Okay.
Wow. Parasite singles.
Italy's even better. 66% of men aged 25 to 34 still live at home. Right.
Yeah, but there are some cultures that have that danger of the mama.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like he's a good boy.
I know. Here's an Australian one. 1 in 4 parents still do their adult child's laundry.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I wish.
And then this one you're going to love. You are going to love this one. In the US, universities now run resilience workshops because students can't handle academic disappointment.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, I knew.
We talk about. We did an episode on around death taxes. Should there be, or the cost of dying and death taxes? And we mentioned in it. We spoke about the whole concept of tax is a pool of money that you're meant to allocate for the greater good type things, the necessities of a community. When you've got situations that universities are having to allocate resources and funding to teach resilience.
And mind you, Dave, scarce resources
that's
and
right.
limited funding.
Correct. That shouldn't be happening. How do you get to 18 and then you need to be taught resilience because you can't handle bad grades? And by the way, bad grades, you see they're finally talking about Harvard University where 90 or 95% of all students have an A average. Like, yeah, whatever. I've always thought that the US system is flawed anyway, and when they talk about having a 4.0, so a perfect GPA. So a student goes through 4 years of college and graduates with a 4.0 GPA. So they never got anything wrong.
Never.
They're student. By definition, student means you're there to learn, which means you don't know, which means you're going to make mistakes. So to me, that system alone, you want to recalibrate that, because that's part of that resilience building. You've just taken an 18-year-old that gets to 22 and walks around going, I'm perfect. 4.0 GPA. I know everything. I don't get it wrong.
I'm actually
seriously.
I'm actually going to develop an app, Dave. With that app I told you that builds apps.
Yeah.
I'm going to develop a resiliency workshop app that helps students handle academic disappointment.
You know what I'm going to do?
And
I'll build one.
It'll be my voice saying, "Yes, right, you're shit, dumbass, loser."
But these are some of the things too that we shouldn't be stepping in the playground when kids are having those arguments for that reason. Right, some of that stuff, and I know, name calling, it can be nasty, it can hurt, but that's where that's the first step in life to where you start to build a thick skin, that someone calls you a name.
That's right.
That's number
Absolutely.
one. It's like, whatever. I had someone the other day call me, Fat C. I'm like, and?
Is that the best you got?
I'm like, I can lose weight, but you're still going to be stupid. So it's like, you can fix fat. You can't fix dumb. But it's like, for me, names and what people, it really, for decades, it's meant nothing. Like, I just don't care, because you go through those things when you're younger. If we don't get back to letting them do that, like, we're not even talking here. You've not just said our universities have set up this thing because international students are so shocked by some of the things that are said in Western society that, they're breaking down. We're literally saying that they can't handle poor grades now, which also says to me, what's happening in your schools?
That's right.
You got grade inflation again. You're passing people because you can't handle having to tell a parent. Guess what? Little Johnny, he's pretty fucking stupid, but he's good with his hands.
Yeah.
Maybe he could be a bricklayer. Those sorts of things don't happen anymore. One of the things I've got on our list for episodes is stop outsourcing your parenting. And one of the concepts is that you don't want to accept the issues with your child and focus on what the good is and take care of it. You want the school and the teachers to fix everything. You want the police to deal with everything. Like, everything's being outsourced. There's, like, who's doing the parenting?
Yeah. I think like as my boys get older, I think one of the things that'll be the hardest thing to do, because I've been so close to them in terms of parenting over the last 6-7 years actively, one of the hardest things to do will be teaching myself to let go. Like, even at the moment, I'm super conscious of the eldest is in year 7. I check in with his homework. You need any help with it? You've got a maths assessment coming up. Let's do some maths together, some quizzes in advance, right? But a lot of the assessments he's handled himself. He plans for it. He prepares for it. So I'm super conscious of not being that parent who's constantly at him, over him, driving him to try and get an outcome. I want him to be accountable for it. And I want him to be able to look at his grades at the end of the year and go, well, yeah, there's a couple of areas I can improve in and I know what to do. And the couple of areas I did well in and I know why I did well, but it wasn't because Dad was up my clacker making me do stuff.
For all our international listeners, your clacker's your ass. It's a very Australian saying.
David's got a very nice clacker.
I do. Once did a spread play under
my butt cheeks.
Under the name Mike
My concho.
But these sorts of things too, when you're stealing your child's success, is also when you're not being honest about their strengths and weaknesses, because stealing their success includes like their happiness, right? Success in life is not monetary. It's not asset driven. Really, it seriously comes down to happiness. Are you happy with who you are?
Yeah.
Are you happy with your relationships? Are you happy with the work you do? Are you happy with your progression through life? So if we don't turn around and read even a report properly, we cause issues. So remember back in the day when you'd get marked accurately. So you might have 77 for science and 78 for for math and 91 for English, and then woodwork was 50, and it was that report was telling you your kid's not a tradesman. They've got some academic abilities here that you might encourage, you might hone, you might push a little. And in reverse, the same thing, that your kid got 50 in science and 65 in English, but 91 in tech drawing and 92 in woodwork. And that was meant to give you an early indicator of the better paths for them.
Yeah.
Where now people look at it and it's like, you got to lift these other ones.
That's right.
That's like,
That's
but
right.
do they?
I know.
Really?
Because they want to know
something. Yeah.
I know. I agree.
Well,
I think one of the things, my two boys, the youngest one at soccer is actually a pretty good player, and he understands intellectually understands a lot about the game. And the eldest one is actually a pretty good player as well, but the eldest one knows, oh, Dad, no, Paddy's better than me. I know he is, right? But I think he's just more into it, right? I enjoy it, but I'm not that into it, right? But the self-awareness for me was good.
That's a big thing.
He was self-aware enough to know that his brother's right into it. Now, he's actually developed that. I said, I'll give you, through a third-party coach that I use at our club, I'll give you both the same sessions, and all I want to see you boys do is improve, right? So that you understand, you commit to improvement, you undergo those training sessions, you listen to the trainer, and then you try and implement it into a game, and you improve over a period. But the improvement comes from your effort, right? And your willingness to want to get better. If you apply that mindset in everything you do, you're going to be a chance.
Do you want me to talk to him? And I'll say, look, if you keep going the way you are, soon you might be able to play rugby league.
Please.
Stop playing soccer.
Please.
Actually, do you want me to hook him up with a former Australian rep that runs coaching stuff? Sound good?
I'm actually really lucky. There's a guy at our club where both boys play. He's actually got a coaching certificate from UEFA, the European Association, at B level. So he could actually coach English Championship, and he's the best guy. He's so engaged with the kids. And for me as a parent, I just hand it over.
Yeah, because I do know someone that runs the coaching stuff. He still gets flown over to England when they want to do some scouting. Stan Ackley.
Maybe
it was one of the early Socceroos.
Maybe we can talk offline.
Yeah, we can do that. I've asked Stan if he wants to come on the podcast and talk about sort of the growth of Australian soccer from the time he was in
actually,
the side.
that'd be a good topic. In terms of, are you saying he's originally from the UK?
Yeah, he signed with Man U when he was 16, 17, and then he came out to Australia and he played with Marconi and different things.
So
the Australian Socceroos. Yeah, he's one of the early Socceroos. He was a captain of the soccer. It's Stan Ackley.
Yeah,
you know Stan Ackley.
So the discussion would be around the cost of. It's an inverse pyramid, right? So soccer's got all the money down the bottom, right, and it all filters up to the top. But the cost of a pathway in soccer in Australia is disgraceful, right? What they pay at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, what they take out of their parents for the elite level, whereas other sports, if you're good, you're not paying anything. We're just going to suck you into the pathway, right?
You know, this could be one of those topics where literally I don't say too much.
I know.
This could be right up this could be in your bailiwick.
We should get him on ASAP. Dave,
I'll message him as soon as we finish because I told him I'd message him when we line up a
Perfect.
time.
Let's close this one out. So we've spoken around stealing your child's success. We've spoken around helicopter parents. We've spoken around the bank of mum and dad. But some of the key things...
I still can't get my head around that one. Those numbers you told me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm across most things before I'm going to have a discussion, but those numbers on the amount of people lending to their kids have shocked me.
That's right. So I think, as a parent, what do I take?
You know what we didn't touch on?
What's that?
Because I just remembered that I was reading an article about financial advisors that are telling the bank of mum and dad to calm down because a few people have been burnt that they can't afford their retirement.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah. So it's but that's probably a whole nother peripheral.
That's right.
Episode.
I think for me as a parent, I say to myself, I want to support my kids, I want to guide them, but I want them to be accountable for the decisions that they make. Right?
I've always been of the view that God gave them 2 kidneys so that they can set themselves up for life. You've got 2. You only need 1. Stop your bitching.
Deal with it. What are your closing thoughts?
Look, I think that collectively as a society, we need to start taking accountability and responsibility, not just as parents ourselves in our home. I think we do need to have honest conversations about Are we going to go back to keeping score, kids? Are we really going to step in too quick with a little bit of name calling in the schoolyard? Are we going to get some of the play equipment back into schoolyards and again accept that you're not going to sue if they fall off and start to build this resilience? Are we going to get them back out having jobs in year 10 again so they can make a bit of money and start to learn? In schools, are we going to stop being so fluffy around the edges? And maybe part of this too is that, as I've mentioned before, I think in Australia, and this is pretty well replicated around the Western society, is that schools are so feminized. And what I mean by that is there's very few male teachers now, particularly in primary school and to high school. And maybe that's part of the balance that we need back, that, as men, we tend to be a little bit harsher, but let it go. They'll be right. Let them sort it out, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a bit more serious than what, people realize. So we say stealing your child's success, and the name of the episode is from the point of view of, hey, have you thought about what are the implications of just handing things over? But this has all come about because as a society, we're removing the building blocks of resilience and accountability. And those really do start in primary school and go all the way through, because if we're having to hand over the cash at 25, 35 years of age for deposits for houses, that's the manifestation of the problem. The problem really goes back to 20 years earlier.
So I'll close up, Dave. Are we raising adults or dependents?
We're raising dependents. Again, we're talking generally, but I think if you look at all the metrics we talk about with, lack of savings, hurt feelings, like everything, we know this. One of the things I like us to do, what we do with the podcast, is we'll talk about some numbers, we'll bring some numbers out, but we're not data dependent. And the reason why I don't want a data dependent podcast is I think that's one of the mistakes we've gone too far, that people are always, I want to see the data, I want to see the data. Now, the data can be good, but in life, if you've lived, opened your damn eyes, had your ears open, you have answers to things without having to ask for, can we get a report on that? Can you do me a white paper? We've become too data driven. And in that regard, we've got people that can't even read data, but I'll go into that in another episode. But you don't need all the time someone to write you a report to tell you where these issues are. We see it, we live it, we know it. Let's start speaking up about it. And by speaking up, again, I'm not saying let's start pointing fingers and blaming, you're the blame. Let's collectively act like adults in a society. Let's start being honest about what we're doing, and let's start making the changes we need without saying, the government should, and individually we can do it.
Dave, I've really got to go now because I got to attend my resiliency workshop.
Yeah.
It's about how can I handle disappointment of the choice of my podcast partner.
That must be a really big workshop.
It is. Yeah, there's lots of us in there.
In fact, it's probably not even a workshop. It's probably just a constant. By workshop, do you mean like psychologist's couch? Do you lie down for the hour?
Yes.
When did it never going to be
when did it all start? There was only one barbershop in Baulkham Hills. I had no choice.
Back in the day, this was before Australia was 27 million.
What do we say, Dave?
You have a right to be wrong.
See you, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.